Welcome back to the Gold News Channel. My name is Kerry Stevenson. Today, I'm bringing you another gold company, and one that you will, if the borders open and everything's going to plan, hopefully, fingers crossed, you can come and meet face-to-face at the Australian Gold Conference in February in Sydney. We're talking with Magnetic Resources, and George Sakalidis is the managing director. Now, who are they? Primary assets are in Western Australia. It's the advanced Hawk's Nest 9 and the adjacent Lady Julie projects in Laverton in Western Australia. George, good to see you. Thanks for joining me on the Gold News Channel.
Yeah, good morning. You're looking very dapper today.
Oh, I'm always looking dapper. Always one has to. Well, I'm not really locked down in. I'm up in Queensland. I guess we're locked in, not locked down.
Locked in. Yeah, it sounds better, I think.
I think it does. But George, you've got a really, really interesting project, and I want to share it with our community because this is shallow, high-grade gold over in Western Australia. You've been doing a lot of work, and there's a lot of news coming up. And so as investors out there, I want them to be aware of what you're doing. So can you just share with us, I've given them where you're located, but what's the news at the moment out of Magnetic Resources?
Well, effectively, we've got two deposits, and those two deposits are growing, and they're both shallow. They're outcrop. One of them outcrops and dips 20 degrees, and that's the Hawk's Nest 9 deposit. That's actually 3 kilometres in length. We actually we haven't closed it off in the eastern direction where it dips, so it's still ongoing. The Lady Julie deposit is a steeper deposit, about 45 degrees. And that one we haven't closed off in the north, south, east or west. So that's completely open, but that's within a 5 kilometre structural zone. So they're both intriguing in that they're new discoveries.
Right.
The Lady Julie area, we've been basically working on that. It's been second fiddle to HN9, which we've put a lot of drill holes into. HN9 will end up being an indicator resource, but Lady Julie is a way to go, but it's showing very good promise. So pretty exciting. And both areas more than likely will be open cut. So these areas, the mineralisation comes to the surface. Very unusual to be able to find outcropping mineralisation like this over large areas, and that's what we've done.
How have you found these deposits, George? Because if they're outcropping at surface, have you had them for a long time, or how did you get your hands on them, and why them? How did you come across it? Because if sounds like the grades are quite big, it's outcropping at surface, and it's quite big.
Well, we pegged it in 2000. Well, we started working probably 2017, but we weren't working on these two areas. We were working to the northwest.
Okay.
At probably HN5 and HN6. And when we worked on those, we worked out that the main structural zones were going to the southeast. So we basically followed those to the south and laid out soil geochemical programs. And that's how we discovered HN9 in the first place. And Lady Julie was discovered later. Again, it was soil geochemistry, but very low level, yet very high grade intersection. So yeah, so Lady Julie came on really last 6 months.
Only the last 6 months for Lady Julie?
Well, the new discovery is only in the last few months, but we've been testing Lady Julie, but not in earnest till now.
Okay, so Hawk's Nest 9, or HN9 as you call it, is the further advanced one. And then you've got Lady Julie. Just talk to us about the sort of grades that you're finding at HN9 and why you see this as quite an exciting area.
Well, HN9, the average grades are going to be 1 to 2 grams. It's very consistent. You know, we've drilled lines every 80 metres apart, and sometimes 40. And you can wireframe it, so you can join the mineralisation all the way through. So when you do the wireframe, you can see it's very consistent. As you go south, generally we have one zone, but as you go south, we get up to 3 or 4 zones in one area. So that's called the thickened stacked area.
Right.
And that thickened area is quite intriguing because that system keeps going. And that's what we see in the big mines next door. The stack loads go down to the bowels of the earth, sometimes 1 kilometre and 2 kilometres. And obviously we're hoping to see that with HN9. So that thickened zone is an intriguing part of the story. So we're evaluating that as well. We understand the geometry of the thickened zone we're trying to evaluate because it's quite thick and obviously it's got great interest.
You said the mine's next door. Who's next door? Because you're at Laverton, aren't you, in WA?
Yeah. Sorry, there's some big mines next door. The Wallaby mine, owned by Goldfields.
Okay.
7 million ounce deposit. It's only 15 k's away. The Sunrise Dam, owned by Anglo Shanty, 35 kilometres away. And the Dacian Jupiter operation is only 10 k's away. So very hungry mills looking for new ore,
Yeah.
and we're finding all the new stuff. So there's great opportunity to.
So you've got infrastructure around you, which I guess does that help when you come to mine? Does that help with the costs? From just thinking about it from an investment point of view, will that help because you've got those?
Yeah, well, it's obviously the infrastructure, but the plants as well. So in theory, if we used one of the plants next door, we wouldn't have to spend the extra capex to build a plant. So that's not only do we have a surface deposit, we have the plants next door which are looking for more material.
So
it may not come, yeah.
So HN9, you say it's very consistent. Is it unusual to find a deposit like this with such, I guess, such consistency? Because normally you'd find it wouldn't be as consistent. Is that what's unusual about HN9 and what's got you a little bit excited about it?
It's the scale of what we're finding. So every time we drill, we find new areas of gold mineralisation. So from that point of view, it's at least 3 kilometres long, that deposit, the HN9 deposit. Lady Julie, currently we think it's maybe 1 to 2, but we think it might continue further north. So the other side to it is that there are other targets that have come up from our seismic work. Some of which correlate with these two deposits, but there are other things that we're looking at. The thrust zones, there's 8 of them, and they're 6 kilometres in length. There's at least 5 of them we haven't investigated. So,
but then, hang on a second, George. For the non-geos out there, including me, what is a thrust zone?
Well, thrust by it basically is like a fault plane that thrusts from the bowels of the earth, bringing the gold up. And that thrusts over all the other stratigraphy, which might be more flat. Those thrust zones themselves are where the gold is coming up, and HN9 sits on one of them, and Lady Julie sits between 2 of them, which are very closely together. That gives you the length, because the thrust zones are quite extensive. These thrust zones actually come to the surface, which is what we see from the mineralisation. And also the dip of the thrust zones is about 20 degrees at HN9, which is the same as what we're finding from the drilling. And the dip of the thrust zones about 45 degrees, Lady Julie. So they correlate. So it gives us a great confidence of what we're dealing with is a major system of gold mineralisation, but has the depth potential as well.
Okay, so it's not just shallow. You think that this could go quite deep as well. So this could be quite a large mineralised zone, yeah?
Yeah, and plus there's multiple occurrences of these thrust zones. So we're dealing with HN9, we're dealing with 2 thrust zones, but it's a 3 or 4 kilometre length.
Yep.
In Lady Julie, we're dealing with 2 thrust zones over a 5 kilometre length. Then we've got all the rest.
Look, so this is big, George, but we're running out of time. I know what I want to find out a little bit is you've got a very tight capital structure. You've had a very good, strong share price performance. since I saw you in 2019 in person, when you were like, and I think the share price was 45 cents, it's now about $1.60, $1.65. So I want to know what is it? Is it the size of the deposit that is separating you from your peers, number one? And number two, do you think one of your neighbours might get excited and gobble you up?
Look, I think there's a lot of reasons, and obviously the size of the prize, it's getting bigger. We don't actually know how big it's going to be. Two, it's a very tight structure, high net worths that don't really sell it. They like the story. So that allows the price to go up. And thirdly, our neighbours are very, very keen for us to release results. And so they can, I guess, model it themselves. We're happy to deal with our neighbours, no problem at all. And we've got nothing to hide. But in the meantime, we want the deposits to grow as big as possible.
Plenty of work, plenty of news flow coming up, and we will probably be having another chat to you in November at the next virtual gold conference. And then hopefully, George, fingers crossed that your premier allows a border to be open and we see you in person in February in Sydney. But I really appreciate you joining me on the Gold News Channel today.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Good to see you again.